Thank you very much for that welcome, and I'm very pleased to be able to visit you again this year. When I spoke to you last, I will have told you how my wife Tanis and I were asked to Bangladesh for the purpose of bringing improvements to what is almost certainly the worst school system in the world. That is but one of the measures by which Bangladesh distinguishes itself negatively. There are many other such measures, but I would insist that that's the most important of them. The challenge of the worst school system in the world proved to be greater than we could resist. So we packed up our 4 quite reluctant children, and we moved from what was then ranked as the best city in the world to what was then and is usually still ranked as the worst city in the world in which to live. Now, we went there to that purpose, but when we got there, we began to see a situation that struck us as more serious and more dangerous than a deficient school system, and that is millions of children in the terrible city slums who are too poor to go to school at all. And we also observed that no one was doing anything about this problem. There are a number of very well-known agencies that work in Bangladesh, but they've always limited themselves to village development. None of them have ever wanted anything to do with these very dangerous, very forbidding city slums. So in light of no one else doing anything about it and being perfect fools, Tanis and I decided that we were going to try. And we quite soon construed that we would have no appreciable effect on this growing situation in Bangladesh if we were to approach it by the normal method. And by that I mean by building schools, hiring teachers, filling the schools with children. That's the first approach anyone thinks of course, but that approach, even though it works very well in a prosperous country, is not answering the problem in Bangladesh. Neither is it answering the problem in our subsequent countries of operation, Pakistan, Nigeria, and India. But as a matter of fact, that approach simply is not answering the problem in the world. That's been doing absolutely nothing to diminish the number of children in the world who can't get an education. In fact, that number is always going up, and at this point, it's astronomical. At this point, we're looking at 1 child out of 2 in the world being unable to gain anything like what you would regard as a proper education. And 1 child in 3 in the world is unable to gain any education at all. And 3 out of 3 adults in the world should be deeply disturbed by that fact. So we knew we needed to find a means that was more effective, much more cost-effective, and more sustainable. And as you're aware, what we struck upon was the idea of going into these slums and teaching mothers of the slums to become neighborhood teachers, reckoning that if we could do that, we'd be working in the same multiples as the problem has been recreating itself. And in pursuit of this, the first thing we did was go to a number of these very well-known agencies with a proposal that they partner with us. And to an agency, they told us that we were inviting futility and fatality. Fatality in that certainly either the slumlords or the corrupt and lethal police in the slumlord service or the enraged and threatened husbands of these Muslim women we were proposing to teach would bring our efforts to a very rapid and emphatic conclusion. And they promised us, if they don't deal with you quickly enough, without question, the extremists will. But they always had what they felt was a clinching argument against the idea, and it was this. Even if you could reach these unreachable women, they could never learn to the extent of ever teaching anybody else. Now, what I'd like to do today is to examine that contention. There are 2 parts to it. The first is these women couldn't learn. The second part is these women couldn't learn sufficiently to teach. So I'd like to take each in turn, as a matter of fact. Now, to do that, we're going to look at a woman whom I will say is perhaps not perfectly typical of all of our mothers. Her origin was typical, so her beginnings would be very much the same as the mother whom you're supporting. So when you hear her story, you can expect that the experience of the mother you're supporting was very much like that. She may not be perfectly typical, but she is representative of the potential of the mothers whom we teach. And her name is Shuli, and a little bit about her, which she will be speaking something about. Shuli was married at a young age, as you will hear, and she was required, of course, to start producing children, even at that young age, as a matter of fact. And she had 2 children, as a matter of fact, neither of which occasion was one of joy for her, because she was very, very woefully concerned about the future of her 2 children. First a girl, then a boy. She was in particular aggrieved to think that her daughter would be trapped into the same circumstance in which she found herself. Now, we opened a school. This is our model. I'll remind you of it. We opened a school right in a slum, and mothers attend that school. And then each of our mothers teaches at least 5 children everything she learns. And this is by no means a casual arrangement. This is a formal structure. She will be teaching the same children for the same period of time every day, starting at the same time every day. And we monitor the progress of the child in her school as closely as we monitor the mother's progress in our school. So this is a very strict and formalized undertaking that we're talking about. Now, she heard about our school and she thought, this is the answer to my problem. If I join this school, I can teach my daughter and my son, and they can escape my circumstance. So when she heard about it, her only reaction was a selfless maternal one. And so she put it to her husband and her in-laws that she would like to join this school. And for her temerity, she was greeted with abuse and ridicule, and was told not to discuss it ever again. Now, in reaction to that, she did something very unusual for a woman in these slums, and that is she nagged. She kept bringing it up and kept saying that this is what she wanted to do, that this was the future for their children. And finally, in exasperation, her husband said to her, all right, this is what I will allow. You can go to this school only long enough to see how miserably you would fail in this circumstance. And then I want to hear no more about it ever again. Now, she entered our school under those conditions. And as I hope you will see, it didn't quite work out that way. We're going to have a look at her. She's going to tell you something about herself. Okay. So if we could have the first one up, number 1. Yes.
Okay. We're getting there. Stand by.
Maybe the folder? That looks right.
If I run to the.
So number 1.
Oh.
So here she is telling you something about herself.
Zoom. Zoom. Oh, Lordy. Hang on, team. We're going to get there. One baby step at a time. And
my name is Shirley. My parents married me to an older man friend. I was only 14 years old. I had received.
Here we go. Share.
Yeah. And then we'll just start the video from the start.
Yes,
Yeah, I will. I promise.
No, you should just the
We're
main.
We're not seeing this online.
Thank you, Greg.
Main share button,
Yeah.
and then we need
And here we go.
to double click on that,
Beauty. There we go.
and now just bring that back. Start.
Bringing
Good.
back. Thanks, friend. We'll see how it goes for video number 2, guys. We'll see. And play.
Play.
There
Good for you.
My name is Shirley. My parents married me to an older man friend. I was only 14 years old. I had received no education as I did not go to school in my childhood. My husband did not respect me as I was illiterate. When I heard about Amorok Society Women's School, I wanted to join so that I could learn and educate my daughter and son at any cost. Now I am educated. I have taught my children and my neighbors' children. My husband respect me and my community also respect me. Thank you, Amorok Society.
And she should be saying thank you to the Rotary Club of Picton too for its support. Now, I think you will probably agree with me that what she just told you gives evidence of genuine learning having taken place. Obviously, English is not her first language. She wouldn't have had a word of English when she entered our school. So you probably could perceive that she was reading what she was saying, but that I think only proves our point, that she's perfectly literate in now 2 languages and very capably and confidently so as well. Now, we teach English for a very good reason, and it's peculiar to me sometimes that we have to explain why we do that, as though learning a second language is some sort of contamination. English represents the language of opportunity in all of the countries of our operation, and if you don't know it, you have an extremely low educational ceiling. So it is necessary, if you have any higher aspirations, it's absolutely necessary to learn English. English is also the means, particularly in Bangladesh and Pakistan, by which privilege protects privilege. It's supposed to remain the preserve of the very small number of very highly advantaged families, and not everyone's thrilled we're teaching the poorest of the poor this very valuable, very competitive asset. Now, she entered our school. One way in which she is not typical, as a matter of fact, is that she wasn't married until she was 14. Most of our mothers were married at the age of 10 or 11 or 12. Some have been married as young as 8 or 7, as a matter of fact. And typically, this was to an older man. So this was and basically, she was moving from her household into her in-laws' household, not as a blessing, but as a new domestic slave. And that is the condition in which the women within these slums dwell, as a matter of fact, in a state of domestic slavery. She entered our school and she began to do very, very well. And so the bargain that she had established with her husband was not fulfilled, because there was no doubt about it that she was succeeding very nicely within our school. So I think you can agree that that demonstrates genuine learning that has taken place. So that would counter the first argument that these women can't learn. What she is expressing and what she is showing is perfectly typical of all of the mothers in all of our schools, in all of our countries, as a matter of fact. So the mother that you support would be making all of the same achievements that you've seen here. Of course, the second part is, can they teach? And to address that question, we're going to have a look at her fulfilling our requirement of her that she teach at least 5 children in her own little home. So Raj, if we could have the second one. And as you look at this, you will see 4 children gathered around her. One of them is her son. You'll also see just the knees of another child on her bed. And that's her daughter. And I point that out because we're going to address her daughter afterwards.
The second one?
Number 2, please. Yeah. Oh, you're a pro now.
Yeah. See, I can learn too.
So this is her home. And you're seeing the whole thing.
Hello, how are you?
Just this one room.
That's good.
Oh, it's a going.
Oh, thank you. So this, the mother whom you support would have this very identical.
I don't know.
As a matter of fact. So this is what she will be doing every day.
আতা আরেকটা কি আনারস আনারস এইটা দিলে করে যদি আগা শোনা যায় এই দিলে
May I see your book, please? May I see your book, please? Thank you. Good work. Good work.
থ্যাংক ইউ
You're welcome. What is your name?
My name is Iman.
May I see your book, please?
Very, very important that we have boys and girls learning together. This is critical to
What is your name?
girls' empowerment, as a matter of fact. But the boys recognize the capabilities of the girls.
That's very good.
We're the only school in Bangladesh.
Thank you very much.
Co-ed.
That's very good work, very good work. Thank you. Goodbye, children.
Now, when she entered our school, she was not as you see her there. She was very timid, and I would even say backward. And I would say that literally because she was one of the mothers who found my presence in the school when I would visit it to assess how it was operating to be so intolerable that she would have to turn her back to me and cover her head with her shawl. She found my presence so disconcerting. Well, but as you see, we've overcome that. She was very happy to shake my hand and very happy to have me visit her home as she taught. And I believe that demonstrates our answer to the second objection. These women are not only able to learn, they are certainly able to teach too. Now, when I visit our schools, or when my wife Tanis visits one of our schools, there has arisen a very lovely tradition. And that is the mothers of the school will prepare a program of welcome for us. And we're very pleased and gratified that they do this, but this is also a very good educational exercise that they undertake to prepare. And it might be traditional drama that they'll enact. It might be a new drama so a new little play that they write themselves. It might be traditional dancing. Might be a traditional song. All of those things the extremists have worked very hard to eliminate from the culture of these people because of their disapproval of those cultural forms, as a matter of fact. But each of those cultural forms finds a renaissance within our schools and within the protection of our schools. So we are not eroding their culture, we're reviving, as a matter of fact. The threat to their culture is not the fact that we teach them. The threat to their culture is the fact that there are vicious extremists determined to stamp it out. Now, some years ago, and Raj, I'm going to ask you back. I'm keeping you busy. Some years ago, I visited Shuli's school, and they had performed a song for me. And we're going to look at that song right now. This is what the mothers of this school performed for me, and I ask you to Now, it is my hope, yes, is my hope that deep in your hearts you can believe that we didn't teach them that song. We actually have no idea how they came to know that song. I will say that we haven't pursued the question all that hard, because some mysteries are so sweet as mysteries, you risk disappointment by solving them. But that song has gone from something that they just prepared. They appreciated my reaction. So that song is actually, by the same strange osmosis, spread to all of our schools, and our mothers regard that as basically their theme song, if you like, or their motivation song, as a matter of fact. When they sang, "We are not alone," I thought, well, I hope you're not alone, because if you are alone, you're doomed. But when I consider clubs such as the Rotary Club of Picton, I'm reassured that perhaps these women really are not alone. When they sang "We Are Not Afraid," my first thought was, well, I'm glad you're not afraid, but that's a luxury I can't share, because I'm too well aware of the threat that hangs over these women on a daily basis. And it does demonstrate the extreme courage that these women show. And that same courage, you can rest assured, is very much a part of the life of the mother whom you support. Now, there are those in the world who believe that their personal interest is best served by artificially dividing the human family and turning one side against the other. And unfortunately, that process and that attitude is enjoying a real currency in the world today. I cannot argue with the success of what they're attempting to do, unfortunately. I wish I could. So while we and you are being very successful in what you're undertaking, they are also being very successful in what they're undertaking. What we must do is exactly what you are doing. And that is, we must reach around those who would divide us with loving, helpful hands. And there's no more or better practical expression of love than education, because that will mean all the difference to their lives. And it does, I can assure you, mean all the difference to their lives. Now, I have to tell you that Shuli is no longer a member of that school which you saw. But, Raj, if I could come back again. This is the reason why. So if you could. Why Shuli left, yes.
Forgot my step one, which is share. And there we go. Come on. Get out of my way. I can't hit the play button with that little floaty thing. Hold on. There we go. Oh.
My name is Shirley. Now I am the teacher of the Calvary Christian Rotary Branch.
And the reason she left that school was because when the Rotary Club of Calgary Crowchild told us that they wanted to sponsor a new school, she became its teacher. Not bad for a woman who could not possibly learn or teach. Now, the final, of course, outcome that we're looking for is not the fact that Shuli has a much better life. That's merely instrumental. Now, I can tell you that she does have a much better life in every regard. And when she said earlier that her community respects her, I can tell you that for sure, because I have walked with her to open her school in the morning through the slum in which that school operates. And every step we take is greeted with, "Good morning, madam. Good morning, madam. Good morning, madam," by men and women alike. Our final product, though, has to be the educated child. The mothers are our means of achieving that, and achieving it at greater numbers and much, much greater economy, and actually greater efficiency too. So we still need to know if this is giving us the result that we want, this method. And to answer that, we're going to hear from Shuli's daughter, Poppy, whose knees you saw on the bed as she was teaching. And she's going to speak to you very briefly. Poppy.
My name is Poppy. I am a assistant teacher of Calgary Coachella Domestic School. She is my mother. I thank Amorok Society for educating my mother, and I thank my mother for educating me.
So there she is, 18 years old, unmarried. Now I have to report too, and as she told you, she acted as assistant teacher to her mother in this school. She no longer does that. And the reason for that is she found it just too difficult to juggle her teaching in our school with her university classes. So we were glad enough to see her go for that reason. That's what I have for you today. I do have one final, and it's when I was here last, I probably mentioned to you, and as the introduction said, that I have written a series of books about children from an origin, a circumstance like that, and how they attempt to overcome the great disadvantages of their lives by not just charitable means, but by their, we might even say, cunning, and their activities to improve their own lives, as a matter of fact, which is very much what we are doing. This is very much teaching a man to fish, as a matter of fact, but it's teaching a woman to teach. And this is very sustainable because it's very much organic within the community, and you can't remove it, as a matter of fact. I'll just give a little aside. I was speaking not long ago in the US, in Los Angeles, with someone who came up to me after my speech in Los Angeles and was very sincerely unhappy and quite heartbroken because he had been a really high-level participant in infrastructure in Afghanistan. And he came to me and he said, "We tried to set up these schools, we did set up these schools, and now we look and it's all gone. Everything we did is gone." And he was really heartbroken about this because he'd invested a great deal of not only energy and effort, but also emotion into undertaking to do this. And he said, "What should we have done differently?" And I said, "Well, your problem was you didn't do it our way." And that is actually a fact. They did it top down, and that does not work nearly as well as from the bottom up. Now, it's very, very difficult to do it from the bottom up. It's much, much easier to attempt to do it from the top down. He never encountered the sort of problems that we encountered in establishing our operations. But really, I am quite confident that if we had had the resources to open our schools in Afghanistan, even with the Taliban having taken over again, our schools would still be operating. They would be operating in a very, very low profile. But I do believe that because of our experience with mothers in so many other countries, all reacting in the same way, that if we had been there, we would still have schools operating in Afghanistan. Quietly, but effectively. I want to reassure you that what you are doing is not a wasted effort. What you are doing is the most effective thing you could ever do with $1,000 a year. There's nothing more that I could think of or cite that would have the same effect as your $1,000 a year. For that, 6 children or 6 people at the very minimum are gaining an education for that $1,000. Now, here in Picton, one child is probably costing you about $13,000 or $14,000. But with your $1,000, you're educating at the barest minimum 6 people. It's far more likely and far more typical that your $1,000 is educating about 12 or more people, as a matter of fact, because of our process of multiplication. So that's what I have for you today. But if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy